Buenas tardes. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos a este
Good
webinar
afternoon and welcome to this webinar on the working document of the continental stage of the Synod. Broaden the space under your tent. To deepen and know this document more deeply, we have with us in the UISG room where there are some representatives of feminine congregations and one representative from a masculine congregation and many other people connected online. Here in the room, we have Sister Nathalie Becard, we have Sister Dolores Lar, and Sister Pat Murray, who will then speak and address you. We will introduce them, and also we are accompanied online by Father Giacomo Costa. We're going to begin this moment with a contemplative attitude as the entire synodal process invites us to, therefore with an attitude of acceptance, of welcoming of this document. This document invites to be received, to be read with the eyes of a disciple. We today try to welcome it and accept it with ears of a disciple. And for this, we're going to take a moment to pray, and we're going to use the prayer that is offered at the beginning of that same document. But before that, I wanted to introduce this prayerful moment with a text of Monsignor Tonino Bello, an Italian prophet and poet and a bishop. It's difficult to find the three things in one same person, in a single person. In his case, it did happen, but he has a beautiful text that speaks of the church as a tent, which is the image that the Synod document uses. And the text goes, it is not yet the moment for prayer. Should the church look like a stone that is still, or like a tent that is moving, which is rolled up at sunrise when the traveler hits the road to face a new journey? The image of the tent helps us understand that the church is a precarious institution that simply proclaims Jesus Christ. It does not place itself at the center. It does not have to do with a church-centered Christian mentality. It's a Christ-centered. Jesus is at the center, and the church is pointing to Jesus. The church is underway. The church walks along with humanity. The church should not put down roots and cling to the ground in order to become stable, like an oyster on the rock. The church must keep moving, and perhaps the tent evokes better this itinerant dimension. This is the text of Monsignor Tonino Bello, the church as a tent. And now we can project the prayer that we'll read in Spanish, and the other people can follow in the language you best understand. Lord, you've gathered all your people in a synod. We thank you for the joy experienced in those who have decided to be on their way listening to God and their brothers and sisters during this year with an attitude of welcome, humility, hospitality, and fraternity. Help us get into these pages, or we could say in this space that we're opening now as on holy ground. Come, Holy Spirit, may you be the guide of our journey together. With this attitude as disciples, listening to what the Holy Spirit is saying to the churches, we begin by inviting Father Giacomo Costa. The first ones to speak will be Father Giacomo Costa, then Sister Nathalie Beccar, who are those that experience the synod more from within. Father Giacomo Costa is a Jesuit father. He's a member of the coordinating committee of the Secretariat of the Synod. And throughout his life, I think that the social area was very relevant, be that for the studies, dedication, or in his life. Today, he's among us because he is participating with those who prepared this dynamic of the synod. He already worked in the preparation of documents during the synod of the young people in a very active manner. And now he participated on the team that prepared the document. So from this experience, Giacomo, perhaps firstly, if you could tell us about your own experience in preparing this document, what it meant for you personally. And then perhaps we could get more into the part regarding the preparation of the document. How have we come this far, and why was this document prepared? What was the methodology and the process that was followed? You have the floor.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. Thank you for this lovely invitation to share something that I believe it is very important for me personally, but for the whole church in the world. First of all, we shall focus the ecumenical perspective that it's quite clear at the moment. It is a path. The idea of journeying together to grow and enrich our souls. I believe that it is very important to think about what we did. Now we'll explain how we got to this text, what it is the role of this text, but I believe it is very important to remember the importance of the process of the journeying together. We shall learn to fulfill this mission, and we shall think about the communication, the recent communication of Pope Francis of the Synodal Assembly that will be developed in 2 sessions on the month of October of next year. It takes time, and we shall learn how to journey together. We shall do it step by step, following some guidelines, and this document has got some value because we are talking about some help, some kind of suggestions to start with this path. I believe that it is very different from what we had in the past. We had a text, a document, and the work of the assembly was to improve a written text that was entrusted to the assembly. Today we are talking about a path, about a journey together, and we shall remember that the preparatory document has got this beautiful sentence, the idea of provide hope, take care of the wounds, and to grow in the relationships. I believe that this is very important. It is a movement of hope fulfilled with the joy of the Gospels. I believe that this is the basis, and I shall say that the experience we had over the last few months and the experience I could accompany in the churches of Italy, and also the experience we had recently trying to gather all the contributions from the different churches are all important experiences with which we could and make an effort to help this journey together. You asked about the experience, the importance of this process of reduction, and I shall say that Natalie will agree, it is very important, this feeling of having a gift in our hands, something we can read and meditate upon. It is, well, a very nice experience because we received texts from pretty much all the bishops' conferences from the Oriental churches. The important contribution that is mentioned many times of the religious and consecrated and the religious of the Roman dicasteries. It is a very important treasure that we shall and that we shall actually provide to the future generations. We shall think about the document. The quotes can help us breathe this feeling of a church that is trying to go into the deep of an experience that is based on the will of God. It is very interesting to note the clarity of this resume, of this summary. Maybe 5% of the document is written with the thinking ahead of what we shall do, but the majority of the document appoints some issues in a clear and constructive way. We actually tried not to arise problems. It is an attitude that I think it is important in this synodal path. The importance of the freedom of speech, the importance to understand why we want to grow together. It is not about imposing our opinion, our way of living the church. It is a common prayer, the fruit of what we lived. This is a holy ground. These documents are precious, and when we touch them, we listen something that tells a lot about the presence of God through the sharing of many people and churches. And then there is also the worrying, the idea of listening to these documents, and we decided to create a system with some groups in terms of reading, some sheets, trying to work on different contributions, and every contribution was read by different people this before the events of Frascati, which we gathered for a couple of weeks, and then we read it with different perspectives, groups divided into continents, into the church status, diocesan, consecrated lay, women and men, thinking about gender perspectives, and then this exercise of the voices that were unheard, the voices that we usually ignore. It is important to try and listen to the minorities in the peripheries. We shall try to hurt the whole people of God. It is a long path in which we try to focus on the main nucleus that at the beginning were very confused. We had some keywords, some kind of reports, but step by step emerge what Nathalie will present. I think it is a structure that points 5 essential nucleus in relationship between them that provides this idea of a church that is truly synodal, in which we face a series of problems. And so it was a long work carried out in 2 different languages. This is a step forward because the Synod of the Youth was carried out mainly in Italian, well, mostly in Italian. Now the work was carried out in English and Italian at the same time. So to enrich with 2 different cultural perspectives, the moment of the reading and of the writing, it was very important to have 2 different ways of conceiving the realities, working at the same time in 2 languages, trying to have this kind of richness in our eyes, that it is very important in the work that we carried out in the past and that we will carry out in the future. It is a work of listening, of prayer, a work in which we tried to make a step forward compared to the Synod of the Youth, in which we had an instrumentum laboris that was the point of reference. We started from scratch, and the text we present today was written from scratch, starting from this work that was very interesting, a true gift. We barely knew each other at first. We were from different continents, and it is lovely to see how we could create, with some difficulties and resistances, a dialogue and a confrontation that was constant. And so we are talking about a group, a true group in which the members, the bishops and the cardinals, well, they feel almost sad that this is happening only today, because this environment of friendship is essential to share and growth in the church. I do not know how many minutes I've got still, but I'd like to say how these documents should be considered in the framework of the process. We are in a phase of listening, and this is very important. It is important to think about the fact that the first step in the synodal world is growing as a church that is listening. We are not very good at listening. We learned this year, but we shall grow it in this skill. This kind of listening, and this is actually something new. Last year, we wouldn't say it, wouldn't have said it this way. This listening is not on the basis of the structure of the church, the parishes, the districts. Is not from the smallest areas to the biggest areas, because this is not good at the eyes of the people. Many in many occasions, people think, okay, I say maybe a thing, but then it will get lost in this scheme, in this pattern in which we have got different levels and in which we lose the freshness, the incisivity of what we say. In this sense, the step in which we are has got the function of being an intermediate phase in which the dioceses listened, sent the document to Rome, and now we know we could have made mistakes also in our listening, but we, and I assure you this, we did all we could because we know the importance of this listening. Now with this document, we shall go and get back to the people of God. We should provide to the people of God the message of what we heard. The continental step is a way to get back to the roots with a text that provides the opportunity of talking with the other churches. We try to maintain all the different voices of the bishops' conferences, not because this sentence is better than others, but because it resonates with people, with many different churches that were representatives of the people of the population of many different countries. So the idea is to walk together with different churches, not on a universal abstract way, but with the churches that are close to us in the continent. And we try to identify three different lines, the important intuitions of the synodal life, that it is not abstract, it is something that is part of our living. What are the aspects that better express our experience? And then what are the questions that we had? What are the question marks? And then the priorities. I know it is a lot and there are a lot of tensions as well we should take care of. But between all these question marks, where should we start when we will be together in the Synodal Assembly? What are the starting points we shall consider? And also the opportunity of the Church of thinking about what we said and choose, recognizes what was the previous experience and resonates into the deep, choosing some points in which we shall work. This is the method, the path of the conversation, of the spiritual conversation that structures all this synodal journey, this movement, Evangelii Gaudium 51, the idea of recognizing and interpreting the good and bad spirit and choose what it is at the basis of the reign of God. And we should do together with our own contribution. We shall listen to the others and build a path together. This dynamism that is very simple and it is at the basis of the Synodal Church animates all the times and all the consultations, these texts and all the process of the continental phase. So I think we shall listen and recognize what the church has lived, and we shall identify where the Lord is present, what are the lines of instruction and life, and then we shall do it to make choices that can help us go beyond and together as a church. I think I talked during the time ahead, but I think that we should focus our attention on this new motto that is radicated in our history, the idea of going forward through the dialogue between people in a way that it is not abstract but concrete, and we shall go into the depth of this listening contributing, recognizing the presence of our Lord, and the will of our Lord. Thank you for your attention. Now Natalie will help us going into the content of this text. You've got 2 minutes left, Giacomo. In these 2 minutes, why do you believe that Pope Francis wanted this synod here in Rome in 2 sessions? What there is behind this choice? Behind nothing. In front of it, there is the idea that Pope Francis believes deeply in the need of having true synodal experience of this journey together, and it takes time, we know it. And then it is very important to take decisions that shall be taken not in a session, in a voting session, without walking together in this process of mutual exchange and interaction. I believe that the dimension of time experience, the idea of learning as a church, is paramount to make steps ahead in a way that it is concrete and effective. So the results of this process can stay with us in time. This is very important because it is an invitation to a style of church based on the idea of the synodality as pre-constitution of the church, where today shall be synodal in the church. And I believe that we shall understand step by step what it is the true meaning of a synodal church. It is important to note that there are difficulties in this path. Sometimes people don't believe in it. There isn't enough hope. There are also those who are contrary to it. And I understand these difficulties. They are actually valuable, precious. It is important also to listen to those who are not actually in line with this synodal path. So I believe that this takes time, and the 2 sessions are a concrete example of the fact that it will take all the necessary time, and that the dialogue is at the basis of what we do. At the end, it is the Pope who decides it, but we know that there is a decision-taking and decision-making process that can be very different. This is the way in which we are all participating to identify some steps ahead as a church.
Thank you so much, Giacomo. I think you helped us understand how this document was prepared, what was used, the process, and what will happen afterwards with this document. And also thank you for sharing your personal experience from participating, and this is also very important. Thank you. We are now going to continue with Sister Nathalie Becard. She is the subsecretary in the secretariat that used to be the secretariat of the Synod of Bishops. Now it is the secretariat of the Synod. I think this already says something about the spirit that there is in this secretariat. She was appointed at the beginning of 2001, and based on her experience, Sister Nathalie worked for many years in the youth ministry in the French Bishops' Conference. I think that this experience from working with young people is noticeable. in her way of working, her creativity, her flexibility. And I was telling her and a group, a synod commission, that when this synod was inaugurated on synodality, we could notice that there was a woman welcoming participants. There was a touch. I had participated into another synod, and I had never seen that touch. So this too is a particular contribution. Natalie, Sister Natalie, as a subsecretary of the synod, also worked throughout the process, as you can imagine, and of course, in preparing this document. So we're going to invite Natalie to please share her experience with us from participating to the preparation of this document, and also about the contents of the document, perhaps some of the main characteristics, some highlights she may want to give us. Natalie, thank you so much, Emily.
So first, ready to express my gratitude to USG and USG for this event, but more than that, for your great commitment from the beginning to journey together for the synodal process. And we have seen really a very strong commitment and participation of so many religious and religious community. So I hope you can put my PowerPoint if that is possible. I will share it after because I will skip some. But in fact, what Giacomo has tried to express is that, so this document that is printed here, that you can upload on our website in different languages, is really coming from an experience, the experience of this logo is trying to express, and is to be given back to sustain an experience. So it's not easy to, I will present the content, but we are ready to receive it as, a step on a synodal process that is taking time, because we need time of maturation, of learning how to become synodal. And this document, as you see here for stage 2, for the continental stage, is ready to sustain, to support a dialogue among the churches of a specific region and to deepen listening. So the title is, as you know, enlarge the space of your tent. But we know that to broaden our views, our experience, we need to deepen. It goes together. So I will try to present, in a structured way, the contents of the document called Enlarge the Space of Your Tent, because this image has really appeared as the key to understand the call coming from all the people of God through the synthesis. And as Giacomo has recalled, even if the document is important, and I really encourage you to read it, but also to ask all your sisters and brothers in your community to read it and to echo it. But it's really to continue to discern what steps does the Spirit invite us to take in order to grow as a synodal church, and as a global church, as a local church, but also as a community, part of the church for each of your community of for religious. And what we have seen, and we have, so that the introduction of the document recognize that the experience of synodality that has already been done through the first phase has really brought joy. And when people experience the joy of synodality, it brings a greater desire for synodality. That's what is coming from everywhere. And we see that this document, in a way, has give us a short-term and long-term goal, because the process of this synod is clearly the synodal conversion of the church, personal conversion and reform of the church. But it's not enough to do a synod for 2, 3, or 4 years. But this synod, the second is clearly at the service of the long-term horizon to become a more synodal church. So from the beginning of the text in the introduction, it goes to the last part of the document, the fourth part that is really explaining, and Giacomo has begun to explain us what will be the continental stage, but we need to situate the continental stage within a global journey of conversion and reform that Synod is fostering. I just want to recall, but Giacomo has already presented that that this document is coming from the reading of all this contribution from almost all episcopal conferences, Oriental churches, dicasteries, but also the synthesis of USG has been read, and you can see, I think, at least 3 quotes. So, and there were also the synthesis from the dicastery for consecrated life, who gathered also many things. So now I want just to present briefly the structure of the text, and then we will go into the text. So the chapter 1 is really focused on the experience of the synodal journey. That is first an experience of joy, of good fruits, but also we need to acknowledge, as Giacomo has said, the difficulties, the fears, the resistance. But what has really emerged very strongly is a profound reappropriation of the common dignity of all the baptized. And we can say the image of the enlarged tent is dealing with that all the baptized really want to be part of the church, part of the tent. Second chapter, it's a very short chapter, but listening to all of that, the synodal process, we can say, is a process of both listening to the scripture, to listen to the read of the times and to the sign of the time, and to listen to the people. And so we already need to intertwine the listening of the word of God and the listening of the people, the situation. So this chapter 2 is very short, but it's key because it gives a kind of interpretation with this image of the tent. This image and narrative represents a key to an interpretation of the contents within the document for the continental stage in the light of the word. Then you have the chapter 3, that is the biggest one, in which we delineate 5 generative tensions that are like 5 topics that bring that not summarized, but that have been highlighted through all the synthesis. So this chapter really articulates the keywords of the synodal journey, connecting them with the fruits of the listening to the people of God. And we see, and probably the greatest issue for the synodal path, when you open listening, and you know that in your community, listening to all of the people, you won't have just one voice. You will have to face diversity, tensions, different views, vision, but we don't need to be afraid of that. That's the main message. And then chapter 4, the next step. And we have prayed with this prayer, because I can really express also, like Giacomo, that reading all this synthesis and trying to draft this text was a profound spiritual, ecclesial, and human experience. So we can see that this text is coming from the spiritual experience of the Christians and the community. It gives a kind of photography of the life of the church all around the world, and is going to deepen an experience of synodality. So now I enter a little bit more in each part. So first chapter, the experience of the synodal journey. And when you listen to the people of God, and when they try to name their experience in a bishop's conference synthesis coming from the diocesan synthesis, what do you listen is the joys hopes, suffering, and wounds of Christ's disciples. In their words, we hear resonate what is at the heart of all humanity. They express a desire for a church that walks with Christ under the guidance of the Spirit to fulfill its mission of evangelization. So in a way, you know, for me and for others, it echoes a lot Gaudium et Spes, one, the joy and sorrows of the people of our contemporary hours. And what we see is, and Giacomo has already highlighted that already, the centrality of experience. The document is important. We are happy to talk about it, but it's not enough. It's really through an experience that we learn synodality. And this experience, in a way, is a process of naming the reality. It's very incarnated and concrete. It's not just to dream about an idealistic church, but to look at the situation as it is. And when you do that and you allow people and you try to word the reality, to name the reality, it's a transformative process because it's a path of truth. So doing that, we have in the first part of this first part, you see, we try to express the fruits, seeds, and weeds of synodality. And we see the great impact of synodality when people experience that, an experience of joy. They appreciate the method of spiritual conversation. It strengthens their feeling of belonging to the church. How many people have said, you know, it's the first time the church has asked my voice. And doing that, I realize more the church is not only priest and bishop, but it's all of those. And it's also a path of recognition of so many people who have felt put on the margin of the church because of the situation, LGBTQ, divorced and remarried, women. And at the end, what has emerged is that this process and the experience of synodality is an experience of liberation and new life. But there is a great part also to express the difficulties, fears, and resistance that we must also acknowledge. And as I said, all of that gives the experience of a foundational reference to baptism. That is really our common baptismal dignity. And the synod process as an experience of novelty and freshness. And you can see that through so many quotes, and it's just some example here. And I finished to read the end of this part. Expressions emerge that evoke rather the idea of distance between family members and a desired return, the end of a collective alienation from one's identity as a synodal church. To use a biblical image, what could say that the synodal journey marks the first steps of the return from an experience of collective exile, the consequences of which affect the entire people of God. If the church is not synodal, no one can really feel fully at home. So the great desire is that the church become more and more our common home with this idea of enlarging the space of the tent. So that you understand why this image has came really as a call. But, and you can understand, I think this image is speaking for herself. But in this part, second part, listening to there is this image of the tent, and I just want to remind that the image of the tent already came in the Synod on Young People to think of a synodal church as the tent of meeting, because it gives a dynamic vision of the church, a church going on the road and a church open to humanity. But the second image that is expressed in this second part, just at the end, is also the image of the grain of wheat that has to die to produce much fruit. And why it is there? Because we have understood also that becoming a new, going toward a new birth of church, to become a synodal church, it's not an easy path, and it's a path of kenosis, you know. So, and I think as religious, we have a strong role to play also to testimony and to help others to enter this path of following Christ with kenosis path, because that's the path for life. And if you want to give space to the other, there is no other way than this self-emptying, we can say. So now I want to go to the third part, that is really the main part of the document, introduced by, you know, this vision of a church of radical inclusion. The words are in the document, a church home. But to do that, you have to face, because we are not already this church as a big tent open to all. We recognize through all this listening that many people feel they don't really have such a place, or they are not completely listened to. So you need to face a dynamic of home and exile, belonging and exclusion. And this synodal process is about that. So we have 5, we can say, generative tension. The first one, listening that becomes welcoming. So that's the title of the first part of this third part, in which we have to acknowledge that this synodal path is a gradual path. It's step by step. It's not in one day you go to the, you know, vision of this beautiful tent for everybody. It's a gradual path. That's why we need also a lot of patience, and we need to start from our starting point. If we start from our ideal point, we won't go very far. Then you have this part on sisters and brothers for mission, in which we have understood that really there are so many challenges in our world, and people name them through all the synodal synthesis. And the only way to face the big issues, environmental violence, you know, is to be together, to care for creation, to deepen dialogue and mission with others, especially Christian from other churches, but also interreligious dialogue. So in a way, we have really listened to a strong call to foster ecumenism. Many reports emphasize that there is no complete synodality without unity among Christians. And it's coming also from so many churches that recognize we need to work together for that, but even also with people of goodwill and from other, so we can't do the mission together in a way. Then you have the third part of this third part called communion, participation, and co-responsibility, in which you have a very rather important part on rethinking women's participation. So when you talk about co-responsibility, it's about going beyond clericalism, and that was, you know, from everywhere, everybody is calling for getting rid of clericalism, but acknowledging that clericalism is still there. And so the question of women is coming, and it was in almost all the reports with sometimes very strong words. So that's really an important topic. And this problem is present across cultural contexts and concern also, it's number 63, the participation and recognition of lay women as well as women religious. And here we have quoted the synthesis of USG. In every area of their lives, women ask the church to be their ally. And it's interesting because it's not only about the question of women in the church, but how the church can help also the society to have a more equality and full participation of women. And it is recognized also that women religious are at the forefront of synodal practices, They can be collaborators and even teachers of synodality. But, and that's a point for all of us as religious, we haven't finished our synodal conversion. So it's also religious communities are called to continue this path. Then we have a part on synodality text shape. It's about also the question of institution, structure, and a major issue also coming from everywhere. And I think that really religious community have to take that into their hand, a strong call for formation for synodality. Because if we want to continue this path, we need really more formation for synodality that touch many aspects of our life. Then the last topic in this, big part, part 3. So, and in which, and in this fifth part, synodal life and liturgy, that's also where you can understand that you have to face tensions and generative tension. It's about liturgy. We have understood and listened to so many syntheses that really express how liturgy is at the center of the life of the church and the life of the Christian, but there is a call for more synodal liturgy and also a path to continue inculturation. That's one of the paths. So that's, this third part. And now to finish briefly, the part 4 is concretely about how to participate to the continental phase. So as continuing this ongoing journey of conversion and reform, I invite you to go to our website, and we have infographies that express rather well what is the continental stage. So we have talked about it already, a time of listening, encounter, and discernment to deepen the process with the idea, it's not just a process from top, beginning at the grassroots, the parish, the diocese, the bishops' conference, and then it comes here. It's a process also, what we have received, go back to the local churches. So we need to think about it with the idea of a circular dialogue among local churches, dialogue between the particular churches and we can say the entire church. It's really this document is to deepen this dialogue at all levels, and also it can sustain interesting dialogues in your community, in your council, and also as UISG. So that's this really continental stage that will lead to 7 continental assemblies that will take place between January and March. And you have here the 7. And so we have asked, and I hope we are preparing those continental meetings with the continental bodies, CELAM, CCEE, FABC, and they are really invited to involve religious men and women to work also with your continental bodies when they are like CLAR, but also at the local level. I think the conference of religious leadership in a country can give their feedback from the text to the bishops' conference and to those who will participate. So there is many ways, and that's really my last word, to be part of this process as religious. Really, I think formation in synodality is a key, and you already do that, and you can continue to do it. I just want to highlight also a special paragraph calling to integrate the call to synodality in the ways in which we exercise functions and missions, renewing structures and procedures. So that's also for us as religious. And a special case is represented by universities and academic institutions. And many community, are part of the academic world. So you are called to to be part of that. And at the end, that's really my last word. I think, and that's also the experience we see, what I have experienced, that becoming a synodal church, that is a dynamic church in history, in the reality, it lead us to a new vision of God that is really a dynamic vision of faith. It changed our image of God to be more and more, to encounter more and more a Trinitarian God. And so I think religious can help people also to deepen their relationship with God and going to a new vision of God. Thank you.
Bien, muchas gracias, Nathalie.
Thank you so much, Nathalie. I think that you transmitted to many of us the desire to take this document to our hands and deepen it and get into every one of these sections. So thank you for the invitation to commit as consecrated life. Before we continue with the next contributions, we've received already a lot of information. Perhaps we can take a couple of minutes in silence simply to take in what we've been hearing. If there are any questions that emerge, perhaps you could make a note of them. The ones who are online have the chat box where you can write down some questions if you have any. For the speakers, if you have a question for a specific person, please say so. And the people who are here in the room, just the same, you can make a note, and at the end we'll open up a space. But now let's take a couple of minutes of silence to simply take all of this in before we continue with the other contributions.
Muy bien, pues gracias. Y podemos continuar. Ahora vamos a escuchar.
Thank you. We continue. Now we're going to listen to two general superiors. We begin with Sister Nadia Coppa. She's the General Superior of the Adorers of the Blood of Christ. She is the General Superior since 2017 and President of UISG as of May 2022. During her experience as a religious sister, she has worked with people at the margins in different situations with drug or alcohol problems or women victims of abuse. So Nadia probably has a capability to listen and to welcome that is significant. So from this perspective, Nadia, as General Superior and as the President of UISG, what can you tell us about this document? And also, as you see in parallel, this document and the document prepared by the two unions of the General Superiors, what can you contribute? So you have the floor, Nadia.
Nadia, ci senti?
Sì, vi sento con un po' di fatica. Voi mi
Dove
sentite?
sei?
Ecco, vi saluto dall'Amazzonia.
Mamma mia. Ok.
Ho tanto piacere di unirmi a voi e questo mi permette di essere davvero in comunione con le tante sorelle, i tanti fratelli che vedo qui dall'America Latina. Ecco, sono nell'Amazzonia e purtroppo la connessione è un po' lenta. Mi sentite?
Sì.
Va bene, va bene.
Sì.
Bene. Bene, io intanto avevo per facilitare preparato un PowerPoint, ma lo vedo proprio difficile visto il problema tecnico. Ma sono molto grata di questa opportunità che mi viene donata di condividere la luce che questo documento porta a ciascuna di noi, innanzitutto a ciascuno di noi qui riunito, alle nostre riflessioni come unione e al cammino, ecco, al cammino che siamo chiamate a vivere con tutti, ecco, senza davvero escludere nessuno. Sono molto grata di quello che ho potuto ascoltare, già quello che in qualche modo ho potuto approfondire. Sento che questo documento che ci spinge ad allargare lo spazio della nostra tenda ci permette davvero di essere comunità di uomini, donne, popolo e che davvero
And so it is very important to enter in this dialogue. Sorry, there was a technical issue. I hope you're listening to me. Sorry, there was a problem with the channel translation. Sorry. So I wanted to express my gratitude for the work that was carried out with the USG and WISG to provide these contributions in the terms of this continent phase. So we started to work in January 2022 with the Synodal Path between the two unions. We could develop a text that offered to us all some kind of intuition, some kind of ideas about how we could share our path together. I would like to say thanks to the members of the Commission who worked to put together all the different contributions from the Institute and the congregations that participated in this path of reflection and deepening relating to the synodality. I want to focus the attention on my contribution in 3 different levels. So, as WISG and USG, we favored the elaboration of a text of the continental phase and what are the steps that we could see in the future at the level of the WISG and also at the level of the USG, I hope, to keep on with this path of reflection together. Sorry if you cannot see my presentation, but the path of reflection, maybe I can start and try to share my screen, at least. Some part of it. Can you see my PowerPoint? So my contributions here, I hope you can see the screen. We participate in an active way as a union, gathering different reflections as we were approaching to the assembly of 2023. The method favored the sharing in these paths, and we found the joy of a church as a path. We know that the church is the most important part of this journey. The congregations got back and we prepared this summary. We want to say thanks to Gemma, Giuseppe Christorei, Maria, I see them here. And I want to say that they work with a lot of commitment, transmitting also a lot of passion for the religious life. And then the other passage of these contributions came in May when the WISG presented the document to the Assembly, and then the International Union of the General Superior presented in the month of July. So this gave much strength to this perspective. I want to remark that the process of reflection in these contributions shall explain the role of what we are doing. And we shall taste this process of love. We shall say these stories that are at the bottom of our heart. We recovered the joy of our awareness as a synodal church, this true desire that we have got in our hearts. And it is a very important event, an event that I want to remark and that I can see in this synodal path, this process of synodal reflection should enlighten in us the true awareness of the communal nature of the religious life, a nature that is transformed into mission and into true love. This synodality helps us and calls us to a journey together in the breath of the Trinity, and we shall live in this space, welcoming more and more the people of God. We shall be fulfilled by every member of our community. The religious life would like to be a community that lives and annunciates the joy of the Gospels, pushed by the missionary passion and the prophetic will of walking with everybody. We shall walk all together without leaving people behind. We shall be in a position of listening. We shall work and find this awareness, a strong awareness that we can find in the whole document, a document that is based on the idea of enlarging the space of the tent. Without a true listening, there isn't a mission. And it is important to think about the listening as a common research, as a common investigation to look for the will of God. A deep listening, circularity, and participation to check and see new horizons, and working together in the dynamics of the encounter, looking for the path that should be followed, letting the Spirit giving forth to our identity for a shared life that should provide us true sense of belonging. So in our contributions in this synodal path, we wanted to provide the seeds of the religious life. We already have seeds of synodality actually, but we shall find more and new seeds that can help us go on with this process. We shall think about the prophecy of this huge call that we've got today in the church. In the church, we are aware that there is a presence of the women at the level of the leadership and of the decision-taking processes, but it is important to build relationships based on the dialogue and cooperation, trying to find new paths to improve the cooperation among men and women. Also at the religious level, in our institute, we see that the personal and congregational processes are helping a lot to deepen our relationships, to facilitate dialogue and discernment. We truly want to learn how to be more inclusive, accepting the cultural differences and the different customs. The principles of subsidiarity, collegiality, and solidarity are helping us in this path. This change in the structures, in the methods, in the leaderships, the idea of changing our way of understanding the reality in favor of the hospitality and of welcoming the others, providing space in our personal and collective tent. But there are also a lot of marks of synodality that provide life in this mission. Our interreligious relationships, the idea of sharing common interests, the interreligious dialogue, the listening of other confessions, and the invitation to present the inclusive face and not exclusive of the church. We truly believe in the new horizons of the solidarity, and especially in listening to the pure and to the vulnerables in the world. When we shall find solutions, also when we do not agree with our fellow brothers and sisters, we know that there are cultural differences. We know that there are abuses in terms of power, authoritarianism, the seduction of the power, and also the problems on the level of the leadership. But when there are the disagreements, we shall find solutions, and we believe that when we understand the problem, we can find new opportunities of transformation in this path in which we learn truly to put us at the level of the other, to be close to our fellow brothers and sisters. The text offers important spiritual and pastoral contributions. We shall remember the importance of our spiritual formation to synodality, the synodality that is dreamt for the church and for the consecrated life. It is a synodality that is based on the Gospel's beatitudes, on the desire of the good shepherd, the idea of being together as the people of God. We are church, the church that is called to the simplicity, to the fraternity, to the welcoming, a pilgrim church that is open and careful to the signs of time, a welcoming church, a church that welcomes the diversity and all the different visions of life, the dream of God in which we shall be participants. It is a dream that sees us as people that walk in the same direction, with the same aim as the Good Samaritan of the humanity that is suffering. The members of the two unions dream of a church that is towards the peripheries, based on the participation that is not auto-referent, that lives in fraternity and communion, a church that is open to dialogue and discernment, a church that is cooperative and based on the communion without clericalism. And to do so, we know that there are consequences that are clear in our path. And these will be the points that we shall develop in the future to learn how to walk together and journey together. We shall radicate our life in the spirit, a spirit that calls us to a new way of creating relationships. We shall be open to cooperation and to an holistic formation, to synodality. We shall reflect on our initial permanent formation, and we shall reflect on our tools of formation that should be based more and more on the synodality, on the idea of a journey together, and on the communion, new ways in which we shall develop the model of leadership and governance we have got today, and then an ecclesial style that should be a true expression of communion and fraternity. We shall keep on walking in this process, a process that is fascinating. To do so, we shall take care of the communication and deepen our reflection on the spirituality of the synodality, because our past shall be shared with all the different members of the church. As we use, we shall work on the true criteria and thoughts, the idea of what it is, the true criteria of synodality, a common call. We all have got same dignity based on our baptism, and our dignity is at the basis of this path. We shall deepen the service and integrate the different human generations without reducing the values, promoting processes of healing and forgiveness. And we launch a reflection. There is still a lot to be done to promote a model of leadership with an adult and proactive participation of all the members, beyond the clericalism that it is still there in our reality. We shall revise our way of governance with decision-taking processes that should be equal and circular. Our structures should be based on the reality, or should be based on the vulnerable, on the call of the vulnerable in the world. And it is important to reflect on the communion. The communion should be a specific feature of the church and of our fraternal realities. I think maybe I talked too much. I hope I didn't. Well, the steps ahead we wish for. First of all, we would like to give back these contributions to all these superiors general, because these contributions shall be welcomed and lived as a starting point to keep on deepening and nurturing the nature of the religious and ecclesial life. These contributions that enrich the document of the final step, of the final phase, are a treasure, a valuable treasure. I believe that we should promote a synodal church at all levels, and we would like to share the text to keep on reflecting on the theme to favor a true incarnation, a vital incarnation of what we are saying. We shall keep on with this process of reflection. We shall keep on deepening these intuitions, the intuitions we were brave enough to share and that we welcomed with freedom for the good of our fraternities and for the good of our unions. And to nourish this spirituality of the synodality, we have the need of keep on with the dialogue and discernment to reinforce the choices and launch good practice that can be shared through processes of formation that can be holistic and integral. We can encourage the use of these texts at all levels. These contributions shall be used at the level of the union, at the level of the constellations, of the congregations, of the institutes, to favor processes of formation to synodality. We are in a path of transformation and evolution in which it is paramount to focus on initial formation, to permanent formation. We shall focus on the spaces of our shared life and on the formation of our leaders. Last but not least, this desire of walking together, it is our desire that resonates in all the texts. And this pushes us to participate in this spirit, to cooperate, to participate, to talk more, to grow, as we can read on the text, in line with the common house of this world. Thank you very much for your listening. I hope that my connection was good enough.
Yes, thank you so much. The connection was fine. We could follow it perfectly. If you want to now stop sharing your screen, great. Thank you. And the reflection, well, Sister Nadia has made us dive into this document prepared by the unions with the contributions that were received. Sister Dolores Lar, who's the General Superior of the Sisters of San Jose de Chambery since 2021, is going to complete and complement this reflection with the perspective from view in parallel. Sister Dolores's formation covers many fields, and this will certainly help us understand this document from different perspectives. She was trained in social communications in English and also studies on childhood. So thank you for being with us, and we're going to listen to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was invited to reflect on two different points. One, I was asked to comment on the document from the perspective of the Superior General, and then comment on the document of UISG and USG. So I'll begin with the first comment. And I would like to preface that by saying that I am a Superior General from the United States. I live in Rome, Italy, and I interface with over 1,300 sisters and about 1,000 associates and lay collaborators around the world. So that's the lens that I am commenting through this afternoon. So the Synod document invites all of us to enlarge the space of our tent with input from people of God around the world. And that offered me, as a Superior General of an international congregation with a wide diversity of cultures, with different ways of thinking, and a wide range of understanding about consecrated life today, an amazing and profound insight into the world within which our members minister. So the image of a tent as a place of communion, participation, and mission is very powerful. But at the same time, it's very, very challenging. For me, as a superior general, it's not a question of will we, as a congregation, widen our tent, for we must widen our tent. But how will we do that? How will we widen our tent? And when we do widen our tent, how will we welcome those who are outside waiting to come in? How will we find and welcome and integrate those partners, those companions on our journey? It's most important not to leave anyone on the outside questioning their welcome. For me, synodality is all about journeying together. And in that journey, we must be open to being converted and being transformed. So as I reviewed and reflected and prayed on the document, I was struck by the many times the word listen was used. And it was also used a lot in the reflections of Nadia and also Natalie this afternoon, that word of listen. And I was reminded of a quote attributed to Saint Benedict, who said, "Listen with the ears of your heart." And I think the call to synodality invites us to do that, to listen with the ears of our hearts, because that kind of listening encompasses our entire being, our body, mind, and spirit. And that, for me, is the true call to discipleship, to listen deeply, to be open to the other and to the whispers of the Spirit that might come to us in a surprising way. As a superior general, I have invited and I have challenged our sisters and lay partners to do this, to listen deeply. Within our congregation, I invite them to listen to our elderly, to listen to our members in the middle, and to listen intently to our youngest members who are so on fire with a heart for mission. And our lay partners, what are they telling us? We have to listen to our local churches. What messages are being spoken there? And listen to the realities of our world. Where's our call to communion, participation, and mission? One of the aspects of the document that resonated deeply with me was the call for more specific formation in how to listen and its partner, how to dialogue. How do I, as a superior general, work with my council to develop a culture of listening and dialogue, first among ourselves and then among our sisters and lay collaborators? This is a culture that I think must be embedded within a diversity of cultures whose understanding of listening and dialogue are so very, very different. It's only after we have realized the capacity to listen and dialogue that we can wholeheartedly embark on our synodal journey. And yet this synodal journey is another call to transformation of a culture of synodality. As Superior General, I see myself and my council holding the tensions, and that was also mentioned several times this afternoon, the tensions between what is present across the congregation, a diversity of cultures, ethnicities, ages, dynamics of local politics, and the local socioeconomic realities, and what I and my council envision and desire for our congregation, for our sisters and lay collaborators. We are certain that we must widen our tents, respond to the calls and the cries of the people of God for inclusion. We are also convinced that our congregational tent must be widened and join the tents of others, other congregations, other churches, other realities. So it's not just a group of little tents, but one very, very large, expansive tent. And in concert with the universal church, we have embraced synodality and the synodal journey, knowing that this journey is just that, a journey that has just begun. It's not an event in the life of the church that's once and done. So that's part one. Those are my comments as the Superior General. But my comments on the continental phase document caused me to really reflect deeply on what our church and what the people of God are saying. It's one thing to be the Superior General of a congregation. It's another thing to be a people of God, to be part of this. So I'm very grateful to the committee that put this document together. It's a treasure, and several have mentioned that word, used that word this afternoon. So first of all, it was very exciting for me and heartening to read the sheer number of congregations that responded. With all the busyness of congregational work today, there was a lot of work put into this, a lot of people who gathered together. For me, that in itself is a sign that women and men religious are deeply committed to the journey of synodality. We welcome this journey, notwithstanding the weeds that we are all familiar with. Some of the weeds are cynicism. Haven't we done this before? Haven't we talked about journeying together before? Were we listened to before? There's the gender imbalance issue. Women being passed over in favor of men, and oftentimes the men were far less qualified than the women who had applied. And then there's the hierarchical and patriarchal model, which ignores the dignity of women religious and all laity, not just women religious. Secondly, I found the content very honest and very transparent, and sometimes it was not easy to read. Sometimes the comments from our brothers and sisters were difficult to read. And I think our sisters and brothers reading the document are also not going to agree on what has been stated. But that's part of the deep listening to the synodal document, the deep desire also to have somebody else listen to what I think and what I feel. In the motivation section for stories and tales of synodality, I was struck by the conviction that the foundation of synodality is baptism, and that was also mentioned earlier this afternoon. For me, that grounded the report in the wider forum of the church. So it wasn't just a document for men and women religious. It was grounded in the wider forum. And I began to see a direct correlation between what UISG and USG did and the report of the synod, the wider synod document. While the contribution of the two congregations, USG, I should say, and UISG, is seen through the lens of women and men religious, the basic issues in both documents are very, very similar. There's an appreciation for the synodal style of Pope Francis. There's mention of cultural differences, sexism, clericalism, abuses of power, and of course, the scandal of the priestly sexual abuse. Nevertheless, the synodal attitude I observed in both documents is one that is a heart rooted in the belief that relationships is where we need to go. We must be in relationship with one another, and not just others like me, but others. And who are those others? And these are the others that want to share God's love. These are others who want to discern, which corresponds to the listening attitude in the synodal document, and to make decisions with other people. And in addition, this attitude may be seen as radical because the word rooted means radical. Now, insofar as a theology and spirituality of synodality, the congregations represented by USG and UISG have offered important contributions to this. But I ask us not to forget or ignore the contributions of the many people who are not members of religious congregations, our lay partners who are highly educated and are just waiting for that opportunity to offer their gifts to the church, to the people of God. Many congregations, and I will speak only of women's congregations with which I am familiar, have spent years engaging members in synodal processes, but we didn't call them that. We said things like, we're going to have a chapter, and any member who wishes to participate, please come. Or we said things like, we are going to discern together what to do about such and such ministry. Or we're going to have theological reflection groups, so together we can come to some decision. We just never use the word synodality, but I think many religious congregations were in a synodal process, only we didn't have the word for that. So also before being sent on mission, that whole discernment process was a part of synodality and what would we do with our life together. However, these were internal processes. You know, chapter was about us. Sending a sister on mission was about us. Sharing our mission and ministry has taken a much, much longer time because for years, didn't we all think we could do it ourselves, by ourselves? Partner with another religious congregation? No, no, that's our school, our hospital. We didn't need the congregation of Saint so-and-so. We were going to do it all. So while we were very good with synodality internally, externally, we weren't that good. So our journey was not balanced. So the reflections and input cited in the working document certainly offer constructive criticism of this attitude. Our lay partners have challenged us. Why haven't you reached out to us? Why? Why aren't you inviting us to be part of your synodal journey? Because it's our synodal journey. So a question for me is how to weave the two together. How to weave the input of USG and UISG together with the input from the people of God. How do we mesh them? How do we integrate them together? How do we realize God's dream, which is spoken about in the synodal document, to be our dream? And how do we enliven the charisms of our respective congregations to be in sync with synodality? So the realization of dreams doesn't come without hard work and cost. The work is demanding, but I think the reward is far greater than any cost or any hard work. Both documents speak of openness and transformation, partnership, collaboration, formation and spirituality, shared leadership and circular leadership, and communication, communication, communication. So in conclusion, I really feel, I believe deeply in my heart that the Spirit is calling all of us, women and men religious, all of our lay partners, all of the people of God, to continue the synodal journey, to widen our tents, to be the people of God that God has called us to be. Thank you for listening.
Muchas gracias, Dolores, por esta
Thank
profunda
you, Dolores, for this deep reflection as General Superior First, sharing your experience with transparency from your congregation, and also in light of the two document and to see what calls we recognize for us. Thank you. We have a few minutes in case you have some questions. I don't know whether there are questions here in the room. We're going to prioritize those who are here in the room since they made the effort to actually come in person. I don't know whether anybody has a question here in the room. We have one in Spanish. I'm Maria Luisa Versosa from the Congregation of the Daughters of Jesus. It's not a question, it's more like a concern that I carry in my heart. I'm sure we all share it for some time, especially since I was at the Synod for the Amazon, but not only that, it's something was said. I'm referring to the abuse. We have brothers and sisters in our homes, our congregations that are victims, and this really causes a deep sorrow in me. I wonder what can we do in addition to, of course, asking for forgiveness, but to make sure that this doesn't continue. It's a confession. It's just venting among brothers and sisters. We're in a family, so I say it, but it's part of our synodal church. It's part of walking together, and we have to take this up as a family. The pains and joys of the church are our pains and and joys. So thank you so much.
Gracias por esta reflexión.
Thank you for this reflection. Yes, Frank?
Ok, háblame en español. A mí también me surgía mientras escuchaba.
As I listened, I thought of questions that may seem obvious, but as you pronounce them, I think they can be helpful beyond the synodal process of the church, beyond our participation as consecrated life. There are questions in this entire process or path that as consecrated life we should raise, because this process is opening a new horizon as consecrated life for us. And I think Nadia was saying this, how can we recreate the charism of our congregations in the future that goes beyond the physical presence of the other consecrated people, which in perspective were less and less, but the gift of God to the church, which we represent at this time, is the charism. How can we keep it alive? How are we going to recreate this charism in the church of this new millennium? And then I was struck by what Nadia said about a formation adding holistic. I would have loved it if she had developed further her vision of a formation when we integrate this holistic aspect. And then thank you to Sister Dolores. I also thought of for this question, beyond the fact that we are USG or UISG, there are no two consecrated lives. I mean, the gender enriches this experience. And I think we should take a leap. I mean, this is an opportunity to go beyond this masculine and feminine. There's only one consecrated life. How can we integrate? How are we going to integrate these two aspects that enrich rather than setting limitations or borders in our way of living?
Okay. Dolores, would you like to comment on that?
I think that in the future, to comment on your question or comment about charisms, we do need to think about and reflect deeply on what our charisms are today. And I think when we do that, we will look at both our men's conference and our women's conference in a very different way. And for me, the future of the church isn't this group working here and that group working there, but as you said, how can we integrate? How can we overcome what we see as gender differences? Because we're all consecrated religious. And how can we figure out a better way to move forward? Thank you for your question.
Ok. Nadia, c'era una questione per te parlando di cosa intendi per...
Question for you. What do you think it is on a holistic formation? Are you there, Nadia? Nadia, can you get back? Nadia? Are you here?
No, probably. Okay. Frank?
Frank?
La prossima. Okay. Puoi parlare?
Maybe just an idea that came about the formation, because during the assembly of UISG, when I had to speak about the experience of the synod, what came to me, it was doing this synodal journey is a kind of second novitiate. So I think when we speak about integral formation or holistic formation, what we try to live in religious life is really sometimes it can be called a pedagogy of initiation that brings all our dimensions, spiritual, human, psychological, theological, and so we have this experience, and we can also help the church, and I think we really need to deepen that. And my feeling is that you have expressed that we are coming from a history, you know, consecrated life before Vatican II was considered as above the lay people. We had strong institution, we had an experience of being autosufficient. And nowadays, our vulnerability in many places, and this synodal journey is calling to resituate us among the people of God within a vision of reciprocity, interdependency, mutuality. And I think we can't rediscover our charism without the other and listening to the other. So I think it's also a big shift for us to really, you know, get rid of this vision of we have to teach, to train, to form the other. We have a lot to give, but in a synodal church, we are all in a learning church, and we have also a lot to receive from the other member of the people of God. So for me, it's really a call, you know, to deepen that.
Grazie. Allora, sì, c'è una questione, una domanda.
Thank you. Paola?
Many questions online. I'm just going to voice 3. So one is, what is impression of some forces within the church?
Sì, volevo, Emily.
Ah, Nadia.
Sì, sei Nadia?
Sì, sono io, Emily.
Nadia?
Volevo
Sì.
tentare di dare una
I
risposta.
wanted to try and provide an answer as the information. I believe deeply that we are living a moment of huge transformation in which the approach to the holistic formation requires the integration of different aspects of formation. Many of the challenges that also Sister Dolores pointed out, and I am thankful for her contribution, pointed out a formation that was at the basis of our life as congregation for many years. We shall let a new spirit. We should allow a new spirit to come. We shall be enriched by the other without wanting to change the people around us. In the past, as religious, we had the idea that we could change the others, but actually it is the others, though that it is them who evangelize us. They provide us a vision that is based on the integration, and I believe that the key word is relationship. And I'd like to add that the new generations ask for it. In our formation houses, the new members want processes in which the life can be integrated, in which everything can be lived in harmony. I believe that this harmony requires a change of our formation processes.
Okay, grazie.
Thank you very much.
Almost at the end, so perhaps one question, and could you select one? Thank you, Paula.
That's a big responsibility. There's the impression that there are some forces within the church that are not enthused with the line of Pope Francis. Will they have an impact on this synodal journey?
Immediate answer.
No, what I can say, you know, it's normal, and all the history of the reform of the church, of change, is highlighting that you have opposite forces or resistance. That's part of a spiritual process. So I think we must be very confident in the fact that the Spirit will continue to lead the process, but we need to listen to all, including those who are opposite. But at the end, the strongest opposite force are those who are against Pope Francis, against the Council, and so against the Synod. But like in the Council, we need to listen to the minority voices and see how you know, we go, and believe in what Pope Francis says. When you have contrapositions, then the Spirit open a new way.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry that we have no time to answer more questions. And finally, we'll invite to Sister Pat Murrid. You know, that is the secretary of the UISG. What is your conclusion of all this sharing around the document for the continental phase, Pat?
Thank you very much, Emily. When I was thinking and really contemplating the document, I asked myself some very practical questions. What to do next? And what should we as religious? And I think today we've been reflecting, this afternoon, we've been reflecting on that. And the first thing I believe is that it gives us the opportunity to share the document with those who did not participate in the local phase, particularly those who feel alienated from the church, or who felt very skeptical and felt that their voice wouldn't be heard or their voice wouldn't be included. And I think the document highlights many groups who felt that they wouldn't be listened to. So I believe we as religious need to reach out. We need to go and share the document. We need to have conversations about the document, particularly with those named as alienated or excluded. But also I noted the fact that the young people didn't really participate in the synodal process. So maybe now is the opportunity to bring this document and to begin a new cycle of reflection. The second thing that struck me both this afternoon and in reading the document is that we as religious women and men, we have a lot of experience of spiritual conversation and discernment over many years. And the document notes that the practice of spiritual conversation was appreciated, but it also was very honest and said it's not easy. We have to learn this practice, both within religious life and in the church in general. And that's an area in which we need formation, because this way of proceeding can help us with discernment and decision-making. Because the opportunity for each person to speak and to be heard and listened to at a deep level, and then to discern the fruits of the group, this needs habitual practice. And we can use this approach in many different kinds of meetings. And putting the Word of God at the center and reflecting together also is a way of discovering our unity in our diversity and our cooperation with God's grace. So I think I am appealing to spiritual families and to congregations to make formation in and the practice of spiritual conversation and discernment part of our way of proceeding, that we build it into everything we can and every way we can. Thirdly, the whole area that we reflected on today was about the different cultural contexts in which the church fulfills its mission. And that the document says this calls for a more meaningful intercultural approach. And we know that walking together, we must begin by appreciating one another's cultures. But but that's not enough. We're called to much more. We're called to create a new culture as we encounter one another. Many religious congregations have been educating their members about interculturality and about living and ministering interculturally. And we must share that learning with others. It's the time to reach out and use that knowledge to share with others so that together we can go on the pathway of intercultural conversion and transformation. We have to ask forgiveness of our failures, our sin of racism, xenophobia, stereotyping, tribalism, and the many other ways that divide us culturally. And I think there are particular paragraphs that hold a resonance for religious life in the Continental document about forms of leadership, and both Dolores and Nadia have spoken about it. So we need to look carefully at paragraph 59 and paragraph 81. It's calling for a circular, inclusive, participatory style of leadership where everybody, young, middle, and older, are involved. Laity associates it, that together we discern God's will for the church as the Spirit guides us. I was struck in reading the document of the many images that are there. And I know that we women religious love to use images. And I'm naming some of them. The tent is the obvious one. But there's the shattering eggshell as a symbol of new life. It's a gorgeous image. The lamp for our steps, the fruits and the weeds, the opened wound of abuse. New life unfurls its wings, a refuge for the wounded, collective exile, home, horizons and peripheries, the perimeter that widens. Now, I think we need to explore these images both from a biblical and a human perspective, to listen deeply to the personal and the collective stories that these images will evoke when we break them open, and that will call us to conversion and transformation. And finally, I was struck in the document about the number of times the word desire is mentioned. We talk about holy desires. That's where the Spirit moves. And I suggest that you go through the text, noting each of these desires. Saint Teresa of Avila insisted on the explicit fostering of great desires. The Teresians are in front of me, so I'm glad. And she wrote, let them begin. She was talking of newcomers to the spiritual life. Let them begin with a sense of joyousness and freedom, she says, with great courage, full of desires to excel in God's service. For His Majesty loves courageous and daring souls. So I suggest we place before God each of the desires mentioned in this document. Desires for individuals, for families, for groups and communities, for the church. Let us have the courage to overcome all defeatism and pessimism. May we desire and hope for great things as we continue the synodal journey, reading the Word of God and the signs of the times, so that we will move forward in the direction that the Spirit is pointing us towards. So in conclusion, I want to thank Brother Emily for his skilled facilitation of our meeting, to the presenters, Giacomo Costa, Natalie Bacar, Nadia Coppa, Dolores Lar, to the team here at UISG, Patrizia Morgante, Sister Paola Giordeo, Miriam De Bartolo, to the technical team, Florence de Levillo, Therese Rad, and Ricardo Dasai. And I hand back to my companion co-secretary, Emily, for the final word. Thank you.
Bien, pues gracias Pat por esta
Thank you, Pat, for this deep reflection and this conclusion. I think it's a good conclusion for everything, a nice brooch for everything that we shared during these 2 hours. I also had a list of thank yous. I only have to thank Pat, therefore, the only one who hasn't been thanked. Thank you to all those who have participated here in presence. Thank you to those who connected online. And thank you to the important work of the translators who help us communicate. Thank you. And all the best.